So, good morning. Welcome to our quarterly department heads meeting. Nice to see everyone today. Thanks for being willing to organize today into 3 different waves for us so we can keep socially distanced appropriately. For those of you who may not have met Monica McNally yet, she's our new selectman. And you'll get to know everybody as we go along. So we will start first with Tony Homicki from the assessor's office.
Good Tuesday morning to you. My report pretty much speaks for itself, highlighted with the tax bills are out. We've been active with some of the used cars have increased in value, so there have been a little bit of callings that are coming through with the tax bills out. We welcome those. We've had an active real estate market with transfers and deeds and recordings almost double over what last year was. We're trying to stay up on task, reading the deeds and keeping our online database within 2 weeks of the transfer recording date. That's something I didn't mention enough on. And in response to last year's pandemic, with the volume of building permits that we've had, we are trying to do inspections earlier than later, starting on permits that took place last October right up through the springtime. We are masking as we are inspecting properties, mostly from the car. We will do some outside exterior inspections. We photo each and every permit that we've inspected, in complement to the land use software that we're transitioning over from CityView over to OpenGov. It's very helpful for the assessor's office to know how many inspections were done by the building officials' offices and what the status of completion are for each and every permit. So those are the highlights and the takeaways from my report.
Thank you, Tony. Questions for Tony?
So Tony, the 400 inspections of building permits is much higher than normal, obviously.
Yeah, it might be closer to 500, I think, this year as we pan out. So, but we're trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Got it.
Good.
I have one question for you, Tony. Would it be possible when you report the tax relief for senior citizens and disabled and the firemen and EMS exemptions to quantify that in a dollar amount of tax relief somehow for
Sure.
us?
I will. Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Come on up, David. Okay, post 53 EMS, Joe Larchevek. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you're having a nice summer. I don't have much to add to the report other than the pandemic readiness continues. And I know there was a question about how do we decide which of the 2 hospitals we transport to. So just to follow up briefly on that, it's generally patient preference. So if the patient requests to go to Stanford or Norwalk, we honor that a good majority of the time. The only time it really becomes sort of out of their hands a little bit is if they are in critical condition and we find ourselves closer to one facility than the other. So for example, if we're on the highway at exit 10 heading south, then the patient will go to Stanford based on their level of acuity and our ability to get to that facility quicker. But other than that, again, overwhelmingly we go to either the patient's choice or the family choice. So I'll take any questions.
Questions for Joe? I just have one
Sure.
sort of read your chart question. I'm having a little bit of difficulty understanding the label on the x-axis on the COVID-19 transports underneath. The 2020-03, 2020-.
Right, so that's just a poor formatting of the months there. So you can see for the last 3 months of April, May, and June of 2021, we've had no COVID positive transports.
Okay.
To our awareness. Our busiest month so far was November of last year.
So I kind of assumed that. So does that mean that August and September are missing from this chart?
Well, I guess you would say that, yes.
For the quarter ended June.
Right, no, it's
Right,
got all
no,
the quarters back to 2020.
there's a gap there, so I'll
Okay.
correct that and I can resend it.
So thank you, I'm
All right.
not crazy. I appreciate that.
Not at all.
And shout out to the Darien Foundation for their generosity in helping you replace your outdated wireless network.
Yes, absolutely. They've been phenomenal, and we're in the middle of the project now. It's a upgrade that was desperately needed. We're very thankful.
Great. Thanks so much, Joe.
Thank you. If you excuse me, I have to run to another meeting.
You bet.
Take care.
Okay, thank you. Emergency Management, Mark McEwen. Good morning.
All right. We had a busy quarter. Flooding happens to be the topic of today. And I just want to inform everyone that of all the reports directly to me, we had 6 businesses that were affected by the storm. We had 91 residents that reported damage, and 8 of those were major in nature. Major means that it had damage to the living area of the structure above the first floor. So basements are excluded. Several of those people have reached out to me. I've had 3 families that I've met with already, and I have 2 slated for today to discuss their options, mainly in the area of hazard mitigation going forward, and of those acquisitions and elevations are the possibilities. It's a little too early to tell. We're in an open grant period, which is beneficial to them because it'll reduce the time it takes, but it still takes 2 to 3 years before FEMA actually provides money. And I just wanted to highlight a couple talking points, if you will. Many of you probably know this, but flooding is the most common disaster in the United States. I think it's in the world. 90% of disaster-related property damage comes from flooding. 75% of presidential disaster declarations are from flooding. And one comment that came out of FEMA just shortly after the storm went through is that we had the most flood claims from the National Flood Insurance Plan out of any state nationwide from ELSA. So if that puts it in perspective, it seems like we were in the bullseye of that storm, if you will. I'm sure there was damages elsewhere, but for whatever reason, FEMA reached out to the state of Connecticut, and then the state let me know that. So it was significant in nature. My biggest thing is people need to research. We have a lot of people that were unaware that they're even in a flood zone. Many people that I spoke to directly will acknowledge they have a little stream next to their house, but they don't realize the potential of that stream during an event. So my recommendation is to go online and to check out FEMA's flood maps, make sure you're not in a flood zone, but more importantly, if you suffer damage this time, you should be reaching out to your insurance agent for flood insurance. It's really the only way to protect your family and your home. Many people don't have it. I really don't understand it. You could live on the top of the hill in Darien and get flood insurance. It's related to the potential of having damage, so your risk. I don't want to say it's cheap, but it's beneficial. It's like having car insurance if you have a car accident. It's something that we all should be doing to protect our families. And let's see. I'll just speak a little bit about the grant program so that people are aware of it. First of all, if you have repetitive losses, you should be looking to get increased cost of compliance. That's what it's called. It's an extra pocket of money, if you will, to repair your home. A lot of times it's to take your utilities out of the floodplain, et cetera. So next time you mitigate some of those losses, there's the Flood Mitigation Assistance Act. That's for repetitive loss properties, and the reason I keep mentioning repetitive loss properties is many of the residents that reach out to us are exactly that. It's not the first time they flooded. It's certainly through history, some of these properties have been damaged multiple times where they're actually severe repetitive loss properties. And those are usually at the top of the food chain for the grants. I can tell you that most of the damages that are repetitive and severe loss are along this floodway out here, the Stony Brook River. And the last one is the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, which is currently available from last year's tornadoes up in Brookfield, I believe, is what caused that grant to be available. So it will help you to either relocate your home out of the flood, elevate your home, or potentially, if you can't see any other options, to possibly have us acquire your home and then deed it as open space in the future so that it doesn't remain in the floodplain. Any questions?
Mark, can you just review a little bit for somebody that might be watching this that feels as though they've suffered significant damage to their home? Can you talk a little bit about, if you can, that 50% rule? Because, you know, everybody goes through that calculus about fixing the damage
Sure.
unless.
Yeah, so it's a FEMA rule. The town of Darien participates in National Flood Insurance Program. So if your home is damaged more than 50% of the appraised value, which is the assessor's card, you can actually go online and look up your property value. It's for the building alone, not for the building and property. And if it suffers more than 50% damage, you cannot rebuild it without either elevating the home or finding some other mitigation effort that will remove it from the floodplain and the potential for future damage. It's not something the town takes lightly, and if you suffered multiple incidents in a certain time frame, and I want to say 3 years rings a bell, but I don't know it off the top of my head, it's actually reduced from 50%, so it's even less. So some of these homeowners are already struggling with that. You know, if your home's worth, say, 200 and something thousand, you know, it's not hard to have $100,000 worth of damage, especially if it involves your kitchen or your bathrooms or some of the living quarters that are expensive to rebuild. So we are looking, Jeremy let me know this morning that he's done some letters in the past for substantial damages. So we are working with the families as best we can, and I just want to get the message out to everyone that the damage we requested be reported to us is nothing more than our effort to try to meet a threshold for FEMA so they declare the disaster. We have no funding available to anyone. I don't want to give anybody false hopes. If enough county damage is calculated and then the state as well, then it may rise to a request from the governor to the president to declare it. But currently, I won't know that in, I'm going to say 2 to 3 weeks.
Mark, what would that do for us, or do more specifically for the homeowners?
It would provide an avenue where they can get individual assistance, which they have to apply. There's no guarantees. The thing that FEMA looks at in the grand scheme of things is a safe and secure house. So it's a lot of the damage that gets reported to us is, you know, some is exterior, some of it is not applicable at all, but if your furnace, your kitchen, you know, things that you really have to have in order to, you know, live and have a roof over your head, those are the things they pay for. It's like a lifeboat. You know, it's not meant to make you whole. Even some of the people that have flood insurance only have it on the building. So we have a lot of people that were reporting losses of personal belongings, as you can understand. It's a big problem, and I can only say that most of these people really need to understand the scope of the problem. I think they do now, unfortunately, because that was one of the worst floods that I've seen in a long time, since 2007, which we had a few that year. So it's hopeful. It doesn't sound promising based on what has been reported to the state, though. I just want people to realize that as well. We'll do the best we can, and I will be more than happy to meet with people. So, you know, the reporting to the state, was last Friday. So hopefully we'll hear something soon. But if people still have damage they haven't reported and want to reach out, I'm sure we'll be able to edit it in and add it. So the town's damages from the current calculation of what has been submitted to me is about $409,500. Most of which should be an insurance claim, so I don't really expect FEMA to do a lot with that.
Is that from the garage?
The garage.
Yeah.
Several vehicles, a lot of equipment. Guys were wading through waist-deep water, taking everything they could out of the building as fast as they could, and what unfortunately they couldn't move quick enough was damaged.
They worked very hard.
But you can speak to that to the departments that are involved. Anything else?
Questions for Mark?
I was just interested in knowing, your second to last bullet, you mentioned LEOP. What does that stand for?
Local Emergency Operations Plan.
Thank you.
So we're currently in a cycle, it's due this January. I've gone through and edited it, added all the new staff members, and the next thing for us to do is to send each department their section of the plan and make sure they don't want to change anything. And then it'll be up in front of you before you can blink an eye.
Okay.
So, anything else?
Any questions for Mark?
Thank you.
Mark, thanks for your hard work. This has
No
been a
problem.
difficult one for sure.
Yep. I'm going to cut out because I have a meeting with one of the families now.
Terrific, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Finance Department, Jen.
Good morning. I don't have anything to add to my report. We are focusing on closing out fiscal '21 right now and preparing for the audit. The auditors will be back on site at the beginning of September. Any questions?
How are their software implementations going? Everything good so far?
Some could be better, but we'll get there. The executive time, the time and attendance, we have a couple of overtime policy setup rules to make sure it's not pyramiding and reporting. So we haven't been able to utilize the system fully on that thing. We're doing some manual corrections. We want to get that working as an automated process. And some departments are struggling. They have to change some of their internal processes. So we're going to do a survey, see what's working, what's not, and then provide some additional training and support targeted at what those problem areas are. The Tyler Content Management, we actually have a session scheduled today that we think is going to solve our final accounts payable issue, and then we'll be able to roll out to the departments, so they'll be able to research the transactions against their accounts without needing to stop what they're doing and contacting us. They'll be able to click on the attachment and see the backup for that transaction, so I think that'll be helpful for them.
Sounds good, thank you.
Any other questions? Kip?
Yeah, I see that in response to one of David's questions that we're projecting a fund balance at the end of this year on almost 26 million. What is our stated percentage of budget goal by the Board of Finance?
The minimum guideline is 12%.
Okay, there is no maximum.
Correct.
Okay.
Where's the 25 million shake out mathematically?
I didn't do the math on it, but I think it's probably around 17–18%.
Okay.
And to follow on that, how much do we believe we're adding into that fund balance?
So the net impact, we started the year at about 25 and change. We're drawing through special appropriations, drawing down for something million. But overall, the drawdown plus what we're putting back, I think it's going to be a net increase of a couple $100,000 from where we started the year.
You know, to put it in perspective, what would Moody's expect for AAA outside of Connecticut?
Outside of Connecticut, 20–30%. We are compared to nationwide fund balance guidelines for AAA. Connecticut is low. There's certain reasons for that. Moody's does give us a little different consideration because we rely primarily on property tax, which is a lot less volatile than what some other areas rely on. They have a sales tax, or some who rely on oil and mining revenues. But fund balance in Connecticut is typically lower than national fund balances.
Okay.
I just don't want you to think that we're outrageously high.
Well, I don't know.
Well, you know, a number of years ago, when Moody's downgraded the federal government, they went through a process, and you know, part of their theory is that no subordinate government should have a higher rating than the parent government. So when they downgraded the U.S., they went around and looked at all the AAAs, and they put a number of us on watch lists, and we were put on a watch list because our fund balance was not over 20%. Even though in Connecticut, as Jen said, typically the threshold is lower because our dominant revenue is the property tax. So I just want you to understand that having that size fund balance is appropriate.
Jen, with added pressures from the state of Connecticut and less revenue from grants and whatnot to communities like Darien, will the Board of Finance make it an annual practice to revisit that fund balance question? You know, I feel that we have over time certainly had a need to work toward a path to self-sufficiency.
Mhm.
And I think, making sure that we're comfortable with that fund balance where it is versus trying to, reach for a new goal of fund balance to make sure we have the backstops that we need is something that I strongly recommend.
They have, the last couple of years, the current makeup of the board is very focused on fund balance, and that is part of their budget discussions. It's always an item called out on one of their specific meetings, usually towards the end, to discuss what is our fund balance level currently, what is it projected to be, is there anything that we should be doing to either bolster it or utilize it to offset potential tax increases. So they are having that discussion. They have not revisited the fund balance policy as an entire board for a couple of years. We did an update a couple of years ago. So probably like every 3 years, that would go in front of them unless there's a request to have it sooner.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Jen?
Thank you for your answers.
Thanks, Jen. Okay, Fire Marshal Bob Bush, good morning.
Good morning, all. My report stands as is. I know there was one question on the false alarm billing collection. Those numbers are year-to-date collection rates. The fiscal 21 seems low at 87.3%, but that also includes, that's a snapshot as of June 30th, and we have an entire month of June that was billed out that payments weren't due until July. The reality is our collection rate is over 95% on a year-to-year basis for the false alarms.
Great.
We continually, we invoice weekly based on the false alarms, and monthly we assess late fees, interest, and send out statements with a note for anybody to contact our office if, they feel that they've been billed improperly, they want to dispute it, so there's a note on their statement if they have any questions on it. Other than that, to add, we had a great fireworks show Thursday night.
Yes, we did.
It was a gorgeous night. Glad we put it off for a week. And we have 2 more fireworks shows that will be private events, one at Woodway and one at Country Club of Darien, late August, early September. I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Questions for Bob?
Under your chart of inspections, what are consultations?
Meetings, phone calls with people, questions that people have in regards to their inspection or code issues.
So it's not a direct inspection as such?
Correct.
Okay.
Bob,
Yep.
when you have a significant structure fire,
Mm-hmm.
do you hold an after action after that?
We do not. I don't know if the fire department does itself, because on our end, we're on the investigation end of it, not on the suppression end of it.
Got it. Okay, okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks a lot. Okay, David is in a meeting, so he'll be, okay. Human Resource, Lori.
Good morning. It's been another busy quarter for Human Resources. I don't have anything in particular to add to my report, but I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I noticed that you had some family leave already. Are people jumping on that pretty quickly?
We have a handful of people on family leave right now, and it's related mostly to employee illnesses.
Okay, so it's not like
No.
we're jumping on the bandwagon.
No, it's not for spouses or children right now. It's really a whole host of health issues that employees are having.
Okay.
And it kind of comes and goes. Sometimes we don't have anybody out on FMLA. Right now, we have quite a few, probably 6 to 8, townwide.
With the law just having passed, I was just interested whether,
So this is the original law with the
Okay.
12 weeks of unpaid family leave. Okay, that Connecticut law of family leave does not apply to us as a municipality.
Oh, it doesn't?
That was for private business.
No wonder.
Right, so this
So
is,
upset.
this is not any different than we've been dealing with in the past.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. Anything
Any other
else?
questions for Lori?
I have
Okay.
one question.
Mhm.
The filling the blank weekend program, is that year-round?
That's human service.
Oh, I'm
This is
sorry.
human
Okay.
resource.
I'm sorry.
This is HR.
I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, we're gonna wait for our next wave, and I see that Jeremy Ginsburg is first to the show, so, once folks have left, we will, we will jump ahead to planning and zoning. That's what happens when you get here early. You get to go early.
There you go. Good morning, everyone. How are you today?
Good, how are you, Jeremy?
Good, thank you. Planning and zoning. You can see from the report, one of the main focuses this quarter is the conversion of the CityView software to OpenGov. One of the essential parts of that is converting our old data into the new system. And that's been something that the software vendors been struggling with, to be honest. And so rather than dumping in inconsistent or data that is not correct, we're working with them every day to say, okay, change this, you gotta get this. So we have pushed back our go live date in an effort to make sure that what comes through off the old system is in the best, most accurate, proper condition, because once you jump to the new system, there's no going back, and our staff doesn't have time to pick through hundreds of thousands of records to tweak this or change this. So better do it right the first time up front and get converted quality data. So substantial staff time spent on that, and the rest is self-explanatory.
What's the new date?
We're aiming for Monday, but it could change. Our vendor emails us at least once or twice a day saying, okay, this part seems good, this, well, we're still working on it.
Okay, but it's reasonably close.
We are reasonably close, yes.
Okay.
Sarah?
Can I ask a question? For those homeowners that have had significant damage from the storm and they've had to rebuild, let's say they are able to get a contractor, they apply for a permit to do the work, is there any way to fast track some of that?
Yes,
So-
traditionally, sad to say, I've been here during enough of the large storms. In 2007, the flood permits were expedited.
Good, okay,
So
thank you.
similarly, if, back then, in 2007, the Roten Bay got very hard hit.
Yes, it did.
And we were able to get those people who had to rebuild back before the Planning and Zoning Commission. Similarly, this time we've met with a number of property owners. Mark McHugh and I have meetings today with other property owners. Some are who are interested in rebuilding, some who will be lifting, and certainly when you look at the charts at the end of the reports, typically we include flood permits separately
Okay.
to specifically call out that those types of permits will be expedited. So far, we've met with a lot of people, but nobody has submitted a rebuilding permit just
It
yet.
just happened, yeah.
We also give them a break on waiving the application fees.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jeremy?
The lowest activity in the zoning board of appeals in 50 years, is that because the law has been made clearer?
Yes, what happened as the judges in recent court cases have specified that and emphasized that ZBA variances shall be sparingly granted, and that the standard is hardship, and, you know, even though there's a lot of, well, if someone does that, doesn't bother anyone, the neighbors are supportive, there's no grand problem with the town, they can't legally grant those variances. So in the old days, a lot of variances, which were insignificant, would be granted. Now the ZBA can't even give even what in the old days was quote unquote a simple variance, because the standard has been interpreted to be so strong. So the ZBA is really doing their job, and by doing that, a lot of people are discouraged from applying because we don't want to waste people's time or effort. And what we're seeing more of as a result is regulation changes to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Things that can never go through under a hardship, people then go to the Planning and Zoning Commission and say, you know what, we need to consider changing the regulations. So a few years ago, we changed the sign regulations to loosen them up a little bit. We've changed the parking regulations to loosen them up. One of the things, and there's a couple other examples I could give, but basically that's the way it's working now, and I think the way the state statutes and the courts want it to go.
A couple questions from me, Jeremy. Has the Planning and Zoning Commission approved all 3 of the reg changes for inclusionary zoning, parking standards for multifamily housing, and removing limits on minimum apartment sizes? Have those been codified?
Yes, those were voted on July 13th, so those will take effect. We're working on putting together the final paperwork to file with the town clerk, get the legal notices in the paper, so those will take effect. As you know, the parking was in response, somewhat response to the state statute, which dictates that all communities in Connecticut, big, small, north, south, rural, urban, all have the same parking standards, which of course
Makes no sense.
makes no sense. We're all shaking our heads. That doesn't make any sense. How can you have the same parking standard in Hartford and Bridgeport that you have in Union or Darien or Ridgefield? It doesn't make any sense.
So the effective date of those is 10/1?
No, the effective date, I think we put for late September.
Okay.
So there is this opt-out provision in the state statute which passed. And the opt-out provision allows planning and zoning commissions to opt out of this state regulation in 2 aspects. One is parking and one is accessory dwelling units. So the Planning and Zoning Commission is looking to opt out of both. We'll be discussing that with the Board of Selectmen probably in September, October. They give it, the law does not go into effect till October 1 relative to parking, so we can't start the opt-out process until after October 1st. So it needs a 2/3 vote from the Planning and Zoning Commission and a 2/3 vote by the RTM, which reminds me I need to reach out to Seth Morton today. Although it doesn't require a vote from the Board of Selectmen, we're going to be before you in October to at least tell you what's going on and explain why the commission believes it's important to opt out. And again, we'll start with parking in October, and we'll talk about accessory dwelling units after the first of the year.
Thank you. Just one other comment. The EPC. So as you know, for years, you and I have talked about the other hat that the EPC plays as the Flood Erosion and Control Board. And we've talked about the EPC Commission undertaking a public education campaign to help homeowners who have waterways on their property understand what good stewardship looks like, how to keep their waterways clear, don't hard surface the banks and all those good things. So I'm sincerely hoping and am reminded by it every time we have a big flood that I think people don't understand how negatively impactful it is if you don't clean out, the waterway on your property. You don't clear those felled trees, or people who dump leaves in the waterway, or grass clippings. So I would like to again reiterate my great interest in the EPC being the driver of that educational campaign.
Yes, I think it's a fine line, Jamie, because you and I have discussed many times the need for folks to be sensitive to it. But on the other hand, we did have reports of people just bringing machinery into the waterways. And so we did have to follow up with at least one property owner and say, you just can't get machinery in there and start dredging out your stream or pond.
Mm-hmm.
You need a permit, it's likely to be granted, but you just can't start modifying waterways or dredging them without a permit.
Of course, I
So-
don't think my comments
Yes,
apply to dredging.
correct.
I get there's a whole process with that, but, I'm talking
Right.
about,
Yes, we hear,
Debris.
we do follow up on complaints of people who are, the lawn clippings decompose eventually, but it just, same with tree branches, if they block a waterway, which I think may have occurred, it really can affect people downstream.
yes, and, you might be upstream and have that condition on your property and it doesn't affect you at all. But I can assure you that the folks downstream are well aware of the debris in your waterway, because they've looked and they believe that it has a negative impact. So I think it's about education, is really my
Absolutely.
point.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you, Jeremy.
Sure.
Any other questions,
I
comments?
just
for
had
Jeremy?
one question on the back, Jeremy.
Sure.
You have could it possibly be true that it takes, on average, 13 days to get a sign permit?
Nope, actually, I think it did, the average, I think what happens usually, that must have been one sign that basically, I think I'd have to look into it, but it could have been, needed ARB approval or something like that, I'd have to check.
So it went on-
Usually signs move along quickly, but,
Yeah, I see your average is 4 days.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, just curious. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for continuing your work with all of our new businesses. It's so exciting to, in spite of our COVID environment, things are humming in Darien, and we've got new businesses coming all the time. It's quite exciting, and I know that you play a large role in that, so thank you.
There is, pleased to report, no vacancy. The last vacant spot was Brooks Brothers, that's already been claimed by the bridal shop. They have a permit to fit that out, so they're moving out at 1292 Post. But basically in downtown, Kennedy's has got their new spot behind the theater. And if you compare with other communities that have lots of vacancies, we're doing very well.
That's really significant to hear that. I won't name names, but I think we've all been to the towns where there's a lot of empty storefronts in some of our neighboring communities. So hats off to everybody who's working hard to keep our local economy going strong. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Ally, good morning. Human Services.
Good morning. I just wanted to highlight our new Filling in the Blanks food program is going very well. We actually are up to 47 children now who are coming, or their parents are coming bi-weekly to get the bags. And this is a year-round program, and I anticipate in the fall when school starts back up again that we'll probably have more children. There's about 100 children on the free and reduced lunch program in schools, so it's going very well.
Terrific.
And evictions, unfortunately, are starting up again. We had 2, as you can see, from this last quarter. We've already had 1 from this quarter, too. So we don't know what to anticipate, but it's on the horizon.
I'm excited about your charity tracker program.
Yes, it's going well. We just started it July 1st. That's our new database, because what we had was, as I said in my report, pretty antiquated. So now we'll be able to pull numbers. If you asked us how many active clients do you have over 65, we'll be able to pull that. Whereas before, we literally would have to go through our list of clients and count them. So it was quite outdated. So it's going well so far.
Great.
So we'll have new reports for you coming next quarter.
Is there any additional support that you need from the community for any of your programs?
Well, we're about to put some information out about the back-to-school program, which we're strictly doing gift cards, and so are the neighboring communities, similar, like the other human service directors have said, Wilton, Westport, whatnot, are all doing the same thing. So we're gonna do Target gift cards in $50 increments for each of the kids. It was very well received last year. It was very efficient use of our staff time, and the families were really pleased. So we'll be putting that word out soon.
Terrific.
And if a resident wants to participate, how do they?
Donate a Target gift card.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
Easy.
bring the card to the office.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Terrific. And just to give us some sense, you hope to serve about how many children?
It's usually around 120 children. We do have some new families over the last year, so it might be a little bit more, but
Okay.
roughly.
And we know if you have extras, you just probably
We
hold
use
them
them
over
throughout
for the
the year.
holidays, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Or if people have some kind of emergency or something comes up, or they need extra clothes for their children, so we use things throughout the year, absolutely.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Ally?
Thank you,
No,
Ally, for
thank
all
you
that
very
do.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, IT, good morning, George. Good, how are you?
Good, very well. Nothing further to add. Obviously, the network's growing, with the addition of this past year with Wi-Fi and the cameras we're putting in, so we're addressing that pretty well. It's growing a lot here in the building.
I have a crazy question, maybe not crazy.
It's not crazy.
Around the public facilities that the IT department manages, schools, town hall, police department. I don't know if you interact at all with the Darien Library, or if they have separate IT providers.
They have separate, they have a separate person. Years ago we did, but not now.
What is the reach of our Wi-Fi service? Could somebody come and sit in the parking lot and access Wi-Fi?
You can get a signal here, but just about you get through to it. Not clearly, but you can
Right.
get it. I mean, obviously, the closer to the building you are, the better. The back, I don't think you can get as much in the back as opposed to the front because of the stuff that's in your office. Your office is the closest Wi-Fi units that are available, and now especially with tax assessors, they've got some units in there, and so does the people down in health.
Okay.
Boaters and park and recreation. So along the front end of the building, they'll
Yep.
probably get a good reception.
If we ever wanted to undertake a project to expand Wi-Fi in public spaces for people, like at the beaches, for example, in our parks, is that something that we could work with your department to strategize?
Because we've got stuff at the beaches already. I know that if anything, Weed Beach is probably in a better position for the way things are now, currently. As far as Pear Tree, I think they've got something inside the guard booth. And things might have to be pulled all the way toward the beach, or at least the area where they have that, I guess the office for the police. Don't they have an office there on the beach also?
Yes.
At the boat club?
Yeah, so something would have to be put to that part.
Okay.
And once they're on the network, Wi-Fi wise, they should be able to get something. Obviously not
Yeah.
far, unless you decide to branch out even more. You'd have to pull cables to exterior locations, where
Okay.
that is.
I know there's a number of communities across the country that have activated their public spaces so that
Mhm.
people can connect wherever they are.
Yeah, some cities,
Yes,
Albuquerque.
Exactly.
I think San Jose.
and I
other
think,
places,
I'd like to
Seattle.
follow up with you to see what that would take. You know, we don't have a lot of public spaces like some cities, but it could be an interesting project for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I'll mention it to Jeff so he knows.
Okay.
Just to see how that works out. But things, it's not that it can't be done.
Right.
I guess just areas have to be, additional cables have to be pulled so you can have actual network access.
Okay.
Wi-Fi units.
Thanks.
Okay.
Other questions for George?
No, thank
All
you.
good?
Thank you, George.
Okay, guys, thank you.
Okay, Park and Recreation, Pam, good morning.
Everybody okay if I demask while I address you?
Of course, yeah.
So I don't have any major things to add to my report, but I would like to highlight that we are working, I did add it in here, but that we're working with a local CPAC group, which is the Special Education Parents Advisory Council. And we recently put together a program at Cherry Lawn that integrated buddy leaders into the program. So instead of having a special needs class just for kids that have some, that are challenged, that it was a program that was inclusive to all, but we advertised and that parents would understand that we have buddy leaders there to identify if any of the children had some special needs that they could address. And it was perfect. It was really great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
So we met with them yesterday again, and we are implementing 2 more in August. So I thought that was pretty great.
Wonderful, really great. Any other questions for Pam?
No, I just say, I looked at the pickleball court and the new basketball court. They are really
They're
snappy.
beautiful.
They're very nicely done, very
Yeah,
well
what a
done.
wonderful improvement.
Yep,
Yeah.
big
Can't-
time.
Thank
can't
you.
wait- Can't wait till the tennis courts are done too.
I know.
The park is
I
gonna
know.
be killer.
Yep, this year.
So, yeah.
Yes, I agree.
You provided, thank you for providing the info on the beach.
Concession.
Concessions. Is it too early to say sort of where that puts us relative to where we were versus the prior contract? Meaning, what does this level of sales work out to be in terms of revenue to the town?
Well, I think Weed Beach is doing better than we anticipated despite the weather and the beginning of it. Pear Tree is not doing
Not
as
doing
well
as
as we
well.
thought. So the vendor did take a loss from Memorial Day to July 1st. So certainly we are working with her to adjust the hours so that she doesn't have any additional losses. She is open only on weekends now and reduced her menu. But, you know, we're hoping that Weed Beach continues to go above and beyond, so that will be 7% of her gross sales back to the town.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is it possible that, there's probably a lot of factors that play into why one beach concession is doing better than the other? Weather, you mentioned,
Mhm.
Other reasons. There's a lot of programming that goes on at Weed Beach,
Mhm.
lots of children at Weed Beach. Would the commission ever consider kind of different offerings, maybe at Pear Tree than at Weed Beach, to sort of fine tune?
That's exactly what we were trying to do from the beginning with the vendor. We really wanted, or we suggested, to have a different menu so that they weren't the same, and it would maybe drive some people to Pear Tree. But because it was such a brand new venture, she opted to have similar menus, and just to see how it would go from the very beginning. But right off the get-go, it was drastically different in terms of people that were showing up there. It was very slow at Pear Tree for the first quarter. Seemed to get, this past weekend, seemed to pick up. So I think we just have to keep moving along, and we're gonna try to plan some different special activities there. Like we did the Weed Beach special night with the dinner on the beach. We'd like to perhaps change that venue for our August one to Pear Tree and see how that goes. And just to kind of drive more people there. And so I think some people don't even know that we have a concession there.
Sure.
Which is interesting to me. But
Was attendance at Pear Tree Beach lower than Weed Beach, just in general? Like, is it just people aren't going to concessions at Pear Tree, or are people just not going to Pear Tree? Or both?
Well, last year we were really busy at Pear Tree. And of course, we did have some concession there on the weekends. That was with private businesses that I brought in, and they did fairly well. So I'm pretty shocked actually at the numbers, because I really felt that the new vendor was gonna bring in more sales. But as I said, the weather was not very good from the get-go. And it was very slow there as opposed to Weed Beach, which there's so many different things going on there that are driving people to go there regardless of the beach, and regardless of the weather. So as you said, I think it's a variety of things. And perhaps we pulled the plug a little early, but in her defense, she was losing money. And we don't want to lose her altogether. So I think if we just try some additional things, perhaps we'll get a little bit more business there.
So this is just my own personal opinion, and the commission will ultimately decide these things. But, rather than try and drive people to utilize a food vendor, trying to ascertain, maybe survey the people that are on the beach there. It's a different crowd. It's definitely a different crowd of people, and maybe they just have different needs, or they don't have needs for food or beverage.
I agree, but we did do the survey last summer, but it wasn't just to that group.
Yeah.
We did get just under 1,000 responses, which clearly indicated that concessions were important.
Yep.
And that's what began our journey.
Yeah.
To open both concessions. So we'll continue trying.
Great.
But I think that's a good suggestion.
Thank you.
I can do that easily.
And thanks a million for your staff's work on the fireworks. Nothing like
That's
pulling
great.
it together in 3 weeks.
Yeah. it was
But you guys
amazing.
did it. It was fabulous. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was heartwarming.
Pam, I have one question on Highland. So I'm thinking about the planting, and I'm thinking about irrigation, and I'm thinking about if we're gonna do the planting in the fall. Do you have any designs for irrigation for the spring? Because probably can't do irrigation in the winter.
I probably can't speak to that because I know that there's planting plan, but I'm not up to.
So that's not your area?
Yeah.
Well, we manage it. but I haven't been as involved in the planting plan. But it's a great question, and I would ask that question as well.
Yeah.
We
So,
haven't talked about putting in irrigation up there, that'd be a pretty big project.
There's no water in it.
Yeah,
well,
there is.
some.
Yeah.
There's,
But
Yeah.
to.
basically in the middle of the field, there's a water station in the middle of
Got
the
it,
field,
yeah.
because it was used for the horse show.
yeah.
But to actually put irrigation lines in it, I, don't know what all that would involve.
That would be
The,
expensive.
When we had the meeting with the consultant about the plantings, it was pointed out by a member of the Beautification Commission that some of the pollinators that they put in will need some nurturing. So we'll have to talk with either Parks and Rec or Public Works about how we can get water out to those.
Does
I
the
know we
town-
have hoses and sprinklers, so, we'll have to do something to make sure that they survive.
Does the
Yeah.
town have any form of tanker truck?
Pardon?
Does the town have any form of tanker truck other than the fire stations?
And not to my knowledge.
No.
But, that's also a service you can hire.
No, that's,
know,
that's
so-
what I was thinking, because once upon a time, a million years ago, I had a place that I had to hire someone to come in to water things, so, yeah.
And we will have, we have to have that discussion about other areas of town where there's gonna be replantings done in the Eversource easement area.
Mm.
And town right-of-way requires us to
Maintain it.
help water it to get those plants started, so, we may be able to tag along a service to make sure those plants get watered, but, just for your clarification, so Parks and Rec maintains the property, cuts the grass, and programs Highland Farms, but that property is not a dedicated park. So any policy decisions about that property are this board, the town. That's not to say you're not involved.
I would also say we have scheduled for you all in October to have a discussion about capital projects that the Board of Selectmen might like to have included in the fiscal '23 budget. So if that's something that you all want to consider, we should bring it up and discuss it.
Thank you. Great. Anything else for Pam? No? Thanks so much. Okay, Police Department. Good morning, Chief Anderson.
Good morning, folks. As always, it's a pleasure to be with you. I'll start by saying that I will plant my tongue firmly in my cheek and say once again, there's nothing new in police work over the last quarter. But the reality of it, we still need a secret decoder ring to figure out who we are and where we're headed in police work. Every day it's a new either direction, mandate, recommendation, coming out of both the police accountability bill and the re-rack of marijuana law. So we are actively working on both of those, and that will continue on for the next foreseeable quarters. With that, I will certainly entertain any questions. I hope you found the report to be comprehensive. I do have to give kudos, as I always do, to my staff, Bob Shredders and Jerry Marin and TJ White, especially the administrative lieutenant who does the heavy lifting on creating this report and getting it to the Board of Selectmen. So I got good folks working for me, which allows me to do my job, and I'm very appreciative of that. So any questions from the board, as always, I'm more than happy to give you my best answer as I know it today.
Questions for the chief? One question from me. Are you or representatives from the Chiefs Association involved with the discussions in Hartford on the youth car theft problem?
Yes, CPCA has had ongoing dialogue on that. And if you might have seen, Glastonbury had like a public forum on this exact topic. I've had many spirited discussions with my folks in judicial, my compatriots in the judicial side, and also in the juvenile justice side of the state's attorney's office of where I think we need to go. There are some inroads being made in that already. I will be quite candid in saying it cannot continue the way that it is, when there is absolutely no responsibility for juveniles conducting this type of activity. There's already inroads being made where it's going to be easier for judges to see a comprehensive background on a juvenile. Even judges, as it stands right now, cannot sometimes get the complete background on a juvenile suspect who appears before them. So there's inroads being made for that. There's inroads being made that juveniles may well have to wear GPS monitoring. And, you know, the juvenile justice system over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, there's been basically no incarceration. To get a judge to sign an order to detain a juvenile and put them in a detention facility, short of murder, it was very difficult to get a juvenile detained. And some of these juveniles are continuing to laugh at us. They know they are going to be out that same day. We had a case in Norwalk with, with one of our, I think I may have spun this yarn before, but Captain Marin lives in Norwalk. His police car was attempted to be entered. Of course, his car was locked.
Thank goodness.
He the next morning or that night, whatever, he looked at his Ring video and he saw, he heard activity in the neighborhood. Looked at his Ring video. Sure enough, this young man was attempting to open car doors. He was apprehended. He had 27 prior arrests for doing the same thing. And he told the Norwalk officers, same time tonight, right, guys? As he's being processed. That has to change, clearly. And there are inroads being made for that. And I think the pendulum will swing a little bit back toward personal responsibility and trying to keep this from happening. You know, as you folks know, if you read the local papers and you read the area papers, these cars are being recovered quite often with either bullet holes in them or guns in them or being involved in crimes, not just in Connecticut, in surrounding states as well. So it's just not juveniles stealing cars for joyriding. That's not what it is. It's crime of opportunity. And as far as index crimes go, we're very safe here in Darien. Our car theft issues and our unlocked cars continue, despite this officer's best effort to educate the public to please lock their car.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So Chief, I did have a question on the firearms. So are you seeing in general that the cars that are required, that are brought back in, that there are more firearms involved? Is that trend going up?
I would say that it is, yes. The cars that are being taken from suburban areas are quite often being used in crimes. It was a rarity that we would ever have a car stolen in Darien that would be either recovered somewhere with evidence of firearm activity or perhaps someone getting apprehended with a firearm in the car. New Britain, Hartford, Waterbury, Yonkers, you name it, our cars are showing up there and in many times they're being involved in criminal activity.
So it's probably not a stretch to say that when that individual comes to your driveway and opens your unlocked car, they don't then go pick up a weapon before they go to some other town. They probably have a weapon on them.
That is a distinct possibility. I'm not saying it's a probability or it happens more often than not, but I can say with almost utmost certainty that some of the people coming to Darien to enter cars and to steal cars are armed. Yes,
Yeah.
they are.
Lock your cars, everybody, all the
Please.
time. Anything else for the chief? Thank you.
No.
Thanks, chief.
Thank you.
Okay, Alicia, Youth Commission.
Good morning. I really don't have anything to add to my report, but I would like to say that I am incredibly proud of the summer camp program that the Youth Commission has going on right now. I have an amazing staff. It has been fraught with challenges, unprecedented challenges, and particularly the lead staff, their ability to manage these challenges is most impressive. And of course, the weather has not been the easiest to cope with, but we figure it out. So I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Questions for Alicia?
Alicia, I have an easy one.
Sure.
The
I hope.
the movie in the park.
Yep.
What park is that?
We're doing Highland Park.
You are?
Yep. And we don't know the movie yet. Changing it up.
So I'm glad the chief is still here. One of your comments under other community involvements is the JRB plans to resurrect a program in fall of 2021. Have you been on hiatus with the JRB?
Yes, due to COVID, there has been no JRB activity. The good thing is there really hasn't been any incidents where JRB would be contemplated.
Okay.
But
Good.
under this new RACA marijuana law, juveniles in possession of marijuana are under the age of 18 get a written juvenile summons that can only be a warning. Even though it's a summons form, it's a warning. There's no prescribed penalty for that, and they're going to be routed to the JRB for possession of marijuana under the age of 18. So it's, 18 to 21 has a different set of rules. Over 21 has a different set of rules, and as we move forward into the future and different dates, new rules come into play. So it's going to be a moving target for marijuana enforcement for the foreseeable future. But I would imagine we would see some JRB marijuana possessions for those under the age of 18. Under the age of 18, they hear legal, right? They're not thinking that, well, it's not it's still illegal for me under the age of 18.
Absolutely.
We'll deal with that as a concept. The JRB should be back on track now that we're hopefully staying out of COVID confinement.
Thank you.
It's a real valuable service to the community, and I'm really proud to be a part of it.
Anything else for Alicia? No, thank you very much, Alicia. Good job on the summer program. Chief, one question. I think that we're all going to be interested in understanding on a little bit more of a granular level the rules around legal recreational marijuana. And I don't like to call it recreational because I don't think people should play with drugs, so I call it non-medical marijuana, cannabis, I guess.
I agree, and our friends in the prosecutorial office and other agencies have put out kind of a cheat sheet that I could certainly forward to you.
Yeah, thank you.
It
Great.
gives you the list as it stands now and when different things come into play. Some of these laws, I don't always agree with all aspects of it. For example, you can't smoke when you're driving, but as a second part of the statute does not allow the police to pull you over for smoking while driving. So it's kind of a law that says don't do it, but you can't smoke within 25 feet of a door, a window, or air intake. I'm not sure how anyone's going to enforce that.
Right.
Maybe in downtown New Haven or downtown Hartford, you can't be within 25 feet of a door or an air intake. And there's some of these things that I kind of just wonder how it's going to play out. And there may be some adjustments to it moving forward.
We would appreciate if you could forward that, and we'll distribute it to everybody.
Without that cheat sheet, I would need a secret decoder ring.
Okay.
So I can certainly do that.
Thanks, Chief. Okay.
Found in your cereal box.
Thanks, everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Take that class.
Secret
Yes,
message
I have that
in our
one.
cereal.
Yeah.
Send the next one in.
I didn't know
And
Alicia
I
was
noticed that we
going
didn't do
first.
buildings. Was that going to be Jeremy?
That was Jeremy. Land use.
Okay.
Building was part of it.
Okay, cool.
We don't have a building department report?
No,
Want
you're
to
good.
Go back and do that, or?
No, that's okay.
So just a minor adjustment as we're moving toward our new organization of Jeremy being the Director of Land Use administrating over the Buildings Department. He is also responsible for the Building Department reports. So I don't know if anybody has any questions for Jeremy about this quarter's buildings report.
What is a certificate of approval?
Certificate of approval is for a project which you would not occupy, such as a pool.
Okay. Thank you. I see pools are expensive.
There are
Average of $73,000 for a pool.
Yeah, most of the pools, the number we see commonly is 100,000.
Yeah.
Part of it is supply and demand. There is such a demand that certainly pool contractors, I spoke to them 6 months ago, and they said then that anyone who wanted a pool this year would not be able to get it. So they are now building pools which will be used next year.
No above-ground pools in Darien.
There are a few, but most of the pools we're seeing are in-ground pools, and there's currently a number that are already through the system, and more it's sitting in our office. So the demand continues unabated.
Terrific. Any other questions about buildings?
Jay, I have one quick question. The plumbing, it has such a big drop off. Is that?
I think that was coincidence. I noticed the same number. Why would it go from 33 down to 1, back up to 59? I don't have a really good explanation. I think it's just randomness. And those are separate plumbing permits, not part of, say, a house, but someone who's just doing a smaller plumbing.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you.
Requisition is $149,000.
Okay. Group C, hi. We will get started with registrars of voters. John and Susan.
Good morning.
Good morning.
After that election, we had a lot of loose ends, and Susan and I have been working hard to get our training materials updated. We've had a chance to get all our equipment serviced. We're in the process of waiting for some new updates on voter laws. And our database is being looked at by the Department of Homeland Security for more secure protection of the database in Hartford. We're getting a new, and I guess Susan can talk about it, VPN to access that database. It's being installed by our IT group under the supervision of the Department of Homeland Security. So that's all going on, which means new logins and all kinds of new training. So we're getting ready for that. And as far as the November election, we're keeping our PPE equipment, everything we have in place, we're going to use in November to secure the election for both poll workers and voters.
Although we don't really have any mandates from, some of the mandates from the state are expiring from the COVID mandates. So we're gonna work with them closely to see what is gonna be in place, whether things will be extended, and whether with this new Delta variant, we don't know whether we'll have mask mandates again, or we won't. We know that some of our poll workers are uncomfortable working with other people, with unvaccinated poll workers, so we're trying to work through that. We don't really have a requirement rule in town hall, but if they aren't vaccinated, they have to be masked. So we're working on that. There are lots of new laws that were just enacted in the legislation, 50 pages of new laws which affect the town clerk and the registrars. We're trying to get some feedback from SOTS, because Secretary of State's office, there's always a lag time, but we have some real time issues that have come up based on these new laws, and we're trying to work with Wade Fox and the Secretary of State's office to see how we're supposed to resolve these issues. But the Citrix installation, as John said, is just to make our connection with the Secretary of State's office that much more secure, so that we can't have any breakthrough in IT. And it's a really overdue thing. And then they're also revamping our database to give us some more flexibility with the CVRS database, the voter database, the registration database. But John thinks that's going to take
basically, right now,
it'll
sometimes it's hard to pull out the list the way we want it. It's not flexible when people ask for a request. The new system will allow us to put a lot of variables in and get a report just the way we want it, which is going to save us paper, time. We'll be able to respond quicker. And just, it's kind of an old system, so that's really overdue. So I think they put it out for bid, they have the requirements, and it's just a matter of them to work it through up at Hartford. So it should be it's a good thing. Even though it's a new system, we'll have to learn it, but I think it's a good thing.
We just have the municipal election coming up. We just finished the Republican Town Committee and Democratic Town Committee just finished their caucuses last week. So we have an endorsed slate of candidates for both parties. It's going to be very exciting. We're hoping we're going to have a higher voter turnout for the municipal election, because we have candidates for so many offices in both parties. So
we're ready for it.
So it's going to be our 4th election in a year and a half, but whatever. It's been that kind of year.
Yeah. Any questions or yes?
Just to
Sarah?
reiterate, the absentee ballots are not a blanket available to everyone. You have to go in and request that, right?
Right.
That's a good question. I
Could
don't,
change,
I
could
don't,
change.
for the municipal
Got it.
elections, probably because of the voter turnout, we haven't gotten any guidance from the Secretary of State's office that they're gonna change that. But we'll let you know.
Thank you.
Yeah. Every day, something new comes
Something
down,
different every
believe
day.
me. It's
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. You're always so well prepared, so thank you.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Your
Any
last
questions?
bullet point under voter registration for the redistricting, I think you meant to say that if the court has to do it, it would be mid-February of 2022, right?
Yeah,
That's what I think so,
the
too.
legislature
Oh,
has to.
thank you. I made a mistake.
Just a typo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did. I
Yeah.
hate that, but thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
Yes,
The le- yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, the legislature has till, I think, November, and if they can't resolve the state lines, then it goes to the Supreme Court in Connecticut, and they'll resolve it on February, and everybody will live with what they come up with.
You know,
So-
it could change our state lines. So some of our General Assembly state and representative state rep districts might change, which means some of our voters might be pulled into other districts with Stanford or Norwalk. John thinks that's gonna be very likely.
Yeah, I think it's gonna change.
Yeah.
Just based on what I've heard in, through the Secretary of State's office and some of the population shifts, so.
Which is kind of a pain, because then we have everybody, we have to, refigure but it's doable.
I think we're the only county that's increased in population, so it's inevitable.
Really?
I believe
Yeah.
so.
Yeah,
Because of everybody coming from New York.
Yeah, and so all the lines will shift.
upstate, I heard they really went down, so I don't know what's going on up there. That's gonna be critical. So it's gonna be interesting, and we'll see how it affects our local lines, too.
But that's next year.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
any other questions?
No, thank you very much.
Oh, thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, Senior Center, Beth, good morning.
Good morning. Usually it's there we go. I did my cardio. Running here. A little late because the senior center is open, but it's by appointment and reservation, so we're checking people in as they come in. And there's 20 people coming in for bingo right now, so. To add to my report, because I didn't put in, moving forward, we are looking at taking the lunch program back in September. So we're adding activities, programs, and entertainments every single month since we started to open this way, but we're sticking with our 3-foot protocol now for lecture-type classes and art-type classes. And for exercise, we're still doing 6-foot distancing. We're going to continue with that, listening to what's going on in our news media and thinking that we might have to be concerned about the variant. So it's better to keep stuff in place than take it away and then reinforce it again. What we're doing is pretty much similar to what Town Hall's doing now, masking in common areas when they get into the program and activity. If the instructor is comfortable and wants to ask if everyone's masked, everyone's vaccinated, they're allowed to do that. Vaccinated, non-vaccinated people have to remain masked. Other people can take their masks off. And we're seeing that people are choosing to keep their masks on because they're indoor, whether they're vaccinated or not. And of course, that's totally acceptable. So if we bring the lunch program back in September, we're going to be doing it in a very modified way. There'll be no lunch line anymore. We're actually buying a container set that the dish will go in with a lid. Everyone will be served. Staff all has their food handlers certificates now, every one of us, beside our chef being licensed. So we'll be the ones that will be giving the meals out. The utensils will be wrapped. Everything will be on a tray. There'll be a time limit of how long they'll be in the cafe. From 8 people at a table, there'll only be 4 people at a table. So we're just moving through this the way that we feel like is a responsible way to move through it, since our population is still the most vulnerable to even breakthrough cases older. So that's what we're doing. Yeah, so there's a lot of activity. I have to tell you, every program that we're offering pretty much right now is to capacity. And we're back to 5 exercise classes that are back to capacity. So people are fighting for place. And the Darien residents were always our priority from the standpoint of signups. So the 8-day leeway we're giving, Darien is coming through, 3/4 of the class is filled. And if I've opened up, especially exercise classes, other days, it's been because for our non-resident members, the ones that have been with us a long time, there is no room. So I'm trying to make a balance there, because we want to stay the wonderful welcoming place we are too, but we need to, just during this time with the limits, we need to really focus on making sure that our residents are served, so. Any questions? I just caught my
Excellent
breath.
job. Yeah, you're doing such a great job. Thank you very much.
It's very rewarding.
Thank you very much for all that you're doing for seniors.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I have one
Yeah,
question.
sure.
Do you think that the lunch program, when it goes back inside, the numbers will be the same?
No.
No.
People are really, really enjoying the drive-through lunch.
Yeah.
And I think that right now, we're averaging 40 people a day, and many days are over 40. We have a self-imposed limit for our chef of like 55 a day. I think that people are gonna be trepidatious about coming back in to eat, because then, they're absolutely more vulnerable when they take their masks off, so there'll be that. But I also think the convenience of being able to pick the lunch up and take it home and even eat it later if they want to, people have really loved that. The thing that we're seeing, the reason why we're looking at moving in September, and again, if some of these numbers change outside, we may still be outside past September, is because now that we're filling, the parking lot becomes rock'em sock'em robots. So I am out there in a parking vest and directing traffic, but some people won't wait till the lunch line disbands, and so I just don't want anybody to get hit by a car or for them to run into each other. So if you have a line of 40 cars out there and people are leaving, and even though we've really done a good job about making people leave like a half hour before, sometimes that doesn't always work. So it's a little daunting right now.
So that's why you wouldn't do a hybrid?
We don't also have the staff to do a hybrid, because in order to be able to implement both of those programs, we would need somebody that could just, give out the lunch, as well as somebody who's inside serving. So it gets a little dicey.
Okay.
Thank you very
You're
much, Beth.
welcome.
Okay, tax collector, Kathy.
Good morning. Just a few highlights from the report. Prior fiscal year, we ended with a 99.74 collection rate, which is higher than the previous 2 years. Should be noted that there are certain situations where I cannot pursue collections, such as elderly deferrals, foreclosures, and then people who are in litigation are not required to pay their full taxes. So if those weren't a factor, the collection rate would have been 99.8%. The number of liens we had to file were only 41, which is lower than the previous 2 years. And then in terms of other collection points, I was a little bit short on prior year collections by about a little over 19,000. That's pretty much timing. I've collected most of that so far this month. Interest was over, prorates were over because there was more construction going on than was anticipated. And then the supplemental motor vehicles were a little bit under, and that's just, it's a guessing in terms of how many new cars and timing of registration. And so far July, it's been a pretty smooth collection cycle. Not seeing any issues yet. So if you have any questions.
That's a fantastic collection rate.
I was very happy.
For a COVID year.
Very, very happy.
Really surprising in a good way.
Yes. Yeah.
Questions for Kathy?
What's the lockbox payment method?
That's, okay, when we have the pre-printed coupons, when the taxpayer provides that, it can go through, it goes up to Bridgeport and it gets processed through their lockbox system. So we don't have to manually enter all those payments. It goes through a computer. We get a payment file, we download it, we go through and make sure everything looks right before we post it. So it's less work for our office.
And how does a property owner get that?
You pay by mail. If you put your check in the mail,
right,
that's where it's going.
Or if you walk in with your pre-printed payment coupon,
Yeah.
it will go to lockbox.
Okay.
Hey Kathy, what do you do for people that haven't paid? Do you send out a reminder notice?
Oh, yes,
or-
yeah,
you do?
several times a year. I also do a lot of outreach. I'm on the phone with people quite a bit. So I will make visits to businesses.
Track 'em
Try to
down.
keep on top of things, because the longer, and it's not to be obnoxious, and people understand, like, the further they get behind, the harder it is to catch up. So I just try to, even if it's a partial payment, just give me what you can, and, you know, till they can kind of work through their situation.
Thanks.
I love the online ability to pay, and I use it, and I see that the actual rate for this past year was 10%. You've anticipated 7%, but it could be higher, right? People are still using them, like, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know what, part of what we're seeing too is, you know, COVID, because
Mhm.
people didn't want to come in. Also, the convenience fees
Well,
were lowered.
yes, yeah.
So I also, in the July bills, I included a little flyer that
Mhm.
basically said, these are the new rates. I am seeing an increase in online payments this July versus last year. So I think that's going to continue.
Certainly makes it easier for many people,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Kathy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Krista is away, so we have her report. Town Treasurer Joan, good morning.
Good morning. On last Thursday, just the only thing that's changed is final year-end numbers, which I sent last Thursday, I think, to Jamie. Hopefully you all got them, but our final year-end, our budget was 125, and our final year-end for the general fund was 153, 511 and 84 cents, which is $28,510.84 over what we budgeted, which I'm very pleased about, because it's very hard to make money when rates are at zero. So that is really the only update, if there are any questions.
Questions for Joan? No?
Hey, Joan, I have one question. So you said in the report that STIF appears to have had a significant amount of withdrawals, but now it looks like that reversed. What were the withdrawals for?
Okay, yeah, STIF, it's complicated. Let me see if I can explain it. With the American Rescue Act, we had money pouring in, and the problem is there's no place to put it that can make any money, particularly when I invest off of the yield curve, and excuse my hand gestures, but the yield curve is going like this up to about 10 years and then goes up. So it's flat, and it's really at zero. What STIF has to do, and for all municipal deposits, it works the same way, is they have to hold reserves. So they are either in or out of reserve position. So they take 10 basis points in reserves and 1 basis point for operating funds. So when they have a lot of money, particularly when money came in the way it did.
That's what I was asking.
Right.
I understand
So,
now.
but it will go back and forth as people withdraw money. They will get out of reserve position, and they will begin to pay that 10 basis points back out. That is where we are right now, I guess, and we withdrew down to about $1,000, just because, as I said, I can't get zero for our money. But we want to keep the account open, and things go in and out of that account, like our ECS and ECR money comes in and out of that account. So we need to keep it active. But now, at the end of this past month, they must have had enough money that was withdrawn by cities and towns that they are beginning to pay again. So they're at 11 basis points. My point is, this is going to go back and forth depending on who puts money in and who takes money out. So it's a little volatile, is what it comes down to.
Thank you. Any other questions for Joan? No, thanks very much. Okay, TV 79, Jim.
Good morning.
Morning.
Happy to answer any questions in the report. Two things I'll highlight. We are building a standalone website, DarianeTV79.com. You can take a look at it now, but it hasn't officially launched. It's hopefully going to have 24-hour live stream of everything that's on our air, and there's a much easier search function for all the old Vimeo meetings. You can look at them by category, you can look at them by keyword, so we'll make a big hoopla when that launches. The other piece that we're waiting for is the installation of the flat screens here in room 206. There'll be one up to, from my perspective, to the right of the seal. There'll be another one over here on a cart. And that will allow people who are making presentations to P&Z, for example, to be able to show their PowerPoint on the screen. And we're also going to be able to use those should we have to go to hybrid meetings. So virtual participants will be seen in the room and will be able to participate to the extent that they are invited to do so. We got the equipment grant money from Area 9 Cable Council, and the town is going to be paying for the installation, and a new monitor downstairs in the lobby as well, too. Happy to answer any questions.
Just like to say thank you to everyone, because it certainly has been wonderful this past year to be able to watch any and every meeting. I know it's actually increased our ability, even among us, to watch more, because we're able to see it after the fact if we can't attend it in person.
Right.
So thank you very much for all that you do.
Oh, you're very welcome. As I mentioned in the report, we were able to return $8,300 from our budget to the town because we didn't hire camera operators. Everything was pretty much do it yourself, go to meeting, Zoom, which made it very efficient for us to get stuff on the air. But we got some camera operators that are looking forward to coming back and shooting these meetings live. We have a trainee in the booth today from Norwalk Community College.
Jim, one question. So on
Sure.
the TV, the new TV thing, we going to be able to put in anything other than a committee name? Will we, how you do timestamps? Will we reference one of those words?
So you'll be able to search by either the name of the committee, or I'm not sure if it searches into the agenda itself, but there's also categories there. So you can say, show me all the Board of Finance meetings, show me all the P&Z meetings, et cetera. Timestamps are something that we're still relying on each board or commission to generate. Okay. So P&Z does a pretty good job of sending us their agenda and showing, okay, agenda item number 1 started at 10 minutes in, agenda item number 2 started at 20 minutes in. So you could go directly to that part of the meeting, those longer meetings, especially when it's 2.5 hours. You don't want to wade through everything, but it'll be able to show it right there. Right. So we're encouraging more boards and commissions through their staff or their secretary to keep track of that as the meetings occur, and then we can just add that to the Vimeo as well.
And then on the PSA you're doing for volunteers, how
Yeah.
are you removing those once those positions are filled?
Actually, I'm updating them since I put the one up that originally was aired. There's been another board. We're up to, I think, 10 boards or commissions that are looking for appointees. So I'm looking at the town website, darien.ct.gov/volunteer, and as I see new positions being requested, I add that to that slide, or as they get filled, I can take them away as well, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for all of that. That's a lot of work.
You're welcome. I'm happy to do it, and I hope it gets some people volunteering, I mean, the people that watch TV 79 are the kind of folks that would want to get involved in boards, commissions, and town government.
Absolutely.
Great. Jim, thanks so much.
You're very welcome.
Appreciate all your
Thank you.
help. Okay, see our health director, David Knopf. Good morning.
Good morning, all. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago when I would prepare a report for the quarterly meetings and a week before the meeting and come into the meeting and say, I have nothing further to add. Do you have any questions? Well, those days are gone. So with that, I'd like to bring some updates to your attention as of today. First thing I'd like to do is direct your attention to the first page of my report, where we talk about the reportable disease summary. And of course, COVID-19 is number 1 for the reportables. But what I want to point out is the mercury, cases of mercury, elevated mercury levels found. We have one provider who routinely tests and does his blood screening for mercury. And as you can see, the numbers went from 2 cases in 2017-18 to 20 last year. This is specifically related to just the consumption of fish. And it has nothing to do with the restaurant or the source of the fish or the store that the fish is purchased at, but rather the nature of fish itself and the fact that large fish tend to accumulate levels of mercury. To that, what we've done is we have on our website a guide for avid fish eaters where you can see how much fish of certain types like tuna, halibut, and how often you should eat these meals. That includes sushi. So, for example, tuna, swordfish, tuna sushi once a month. That's a maximum limit for that people should be eating fish. Any higher consumption rates than that, you're liable to end up with elevated mercury levels. Now, I consulted with DPH about this, say how many pediatricians and how many, well, the problem is with younger kids, and that's where the mercury poisoning tends to affect neurological development in pregnant women and younger children. Not so bad for us adults, but how widely known is this, and why is it only one practice is doing the testing? So they're going to send out notices to doctors throughout the state, letting them know that this should be done more than it is currently being done. I mean, logically, it would say if we only have one practice and we have this number, that the case number is considerably higher. As far as the risk that it poses to the general public, it's not really that significant, but it is for pregnant women and developing neurological conditions. So, and then again to that chart, the number one reportable is COVID. So far in July, we've had 18 cases. Thought you'd want to be updated on that. Of the 18 cases, 5 are under the age of 12, so they're ineligible for vaccine. That leaves us with 13. Of that 13, we were able to interview some of those people, not everybody. We have not been able to reach 6 of those people, and of that, 5 were not fully vaccinated. For one reason or another, they either didn't get vaccinated or they only got one dose. Nobody is severely ill. For the most part, we're talking about minor symptoms. So and we're going to be revising and adding the weekly report back to the website. We'll be posting it. It's going to be revised, and we're going to continue to provide this information as best we can with who's been vaccinated and who hasn't. And the other thing that I would like to also point out is on the next page, the COVID-19 update, Darien vaccination rates. Now, I did some research on this yesterday. Darien has the highest vaccination rate of any town in Connecticut.
Awesome.
I want to commend all the volunteers who work so hard to make this possible. And I think maybe this chart, maybe it's going to be redone and be included in our weekly reports. But what's important to note is that the age group, 0 to 11, the number of 4,500 that is the population of the town that is not eligible for vaccine. They're under 12. But if you look at the 12 through 65 plus, add that up, that comes to 17,000 people who are eligible for vaccine. And when you do the percentages and get the numbers of people who've been vaccinated or partially vaccinated, that comes out to be almost 16,000 people. So our actual vaccination rate for those who are eligible really is over 92%. So again, kudos to the town. And fully vaccinated, we're running upwards of fully vaccinated, we're in the
Your chart says 66.9.
yeah, but that's 66.9. That's of total population.
Okay.
So our total vaccination rate, wrote it down somewhere, is 82%. Totally vaccinated in town of those who are eligible. And that compares with statewide. The statewide average is 58%. and first dose, 63%. So we're well above the state average, and well above the state average with respect to fully vaccinated too. The one thing that I want to point out in that is the difference in vaccination rates versus the rest of the state. You know, when we're sending our teams to play in other areas, we're going to be likely playing against teams that maybe don't have the same vaccination rates as our kids do. So, you know, we're doing great here in town. I wish I could say the state was doing as well as we are, but that's my update for today.
If
Yes.
at all possible, you mentioned that you were trying to find out if some of the folks who have had COVID recently have been vaccinated. That information would be particularly useful if you can determine, I know you haven't been able to talk to everyone, but that would be, I don't know if we can add a column or something to that data, but man, that
I
would
know.
be useful.
The problem we have with that is that we get instantaneous information on a positive case.
Right.
And there is a column on a database where it's supposed to be filled in that says, you know, yes, the person's been vaccinated, but it's
Right.
never filled in.
Of course.
And the reason that it's not filled in is because CDC only requires that to be reported in cases that are hospitalized.
Interesting.
So in Connecticut, it's not being provided, and the only way we can find out is by getting in
By
touch with the
interviewing.
individuals.
Right.
And that's not always able to be done. Like, say, we get our reports this morning, and we may not be able to get in touch with people for a few days. So it's going to be an aggregate report. So like right now, I can say that through the month of July, you know, we've been able to contact this many people.
Right.
So that's
Even
how
that
we're
would be
going to be
useful,
reporting
yeah.
it. It's not going to be real
Daily,
time.
of course, of course.
Can't do it that way.
No, but even in aggregate, that would be helpful.
That will be part of our
Thank you.
weekly report, yes. Because that is important to know. And we've asked DPH to start, please asking for that,
Tracking,
you
yes.
know, in their, it's not that big a deal for them in the labs to check off that box, because that's really all it is. But it's not being done. Yes.
I have 2 quick questions. So the testing site, no plans on closing it down?
No, as a matter of fact, he just asked for approval to expand the hours.
Okay.
He's anticipating testing, especially as school starts up. And with respect to school, I have a meeting scheduled with Dr. Adley and the medical advisor at noon to discuss the new interim recommendations for COVID that was just released by the state. It says July 25th, but I received it this morning. So we'll be discussing the COVID restrictions for school. Right now, we're anticipating mask wearing is going to be required. The good news for school is if you're vaccinated, you won't need to be quarantined for the kids. So that's a big plus for getting vaccinated, and a message that we want to make sure is clear. If you're-
And one question, going over to the bug zone, the mosquito locations, where are those? You collect mosquitoes?
There's one down on Butler's Island, and the other one's up near the high school.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for David? David, I hope the state recognizes the good work of your department and the town of Darien on the success of our vaccination rates.
Yeah.
It's really incredible.
It really is, and again, I have to thank our staff and our volunteers for making it all possible, because it was pretty much a volunteer effort. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Okay. So we have Ed Gentile, and Ed is going to give his report and then be part of our Board of Selectmen meetings. So for the rest of you that have already reported, you're welcome to leave the meeting at this time. Thank you very much.
But you can stay.
You can stay if you want to.
You're welcome.
but,
What Ed has to say is very important.
That's part, the executive session is, oh, okay. Yeah.
But the appointments, if you don't vote in
Yeah.
favor on the
Yeah.
appointments, they don't happen.
Yeah, so I have a hard stop at 10 minutes to 11. So we're gonna
Okay.
do our best to get through this. And I think I have to vote on the appointments, so we might wanna move our old business and appointments up in the agenda, so we'll
Absolutely,
try and
yeah.
go as
No
fast as
problem.
we can here.
Whatever we need to do.
Ed, good morning. Thank you very much. Would you like to run through your quarterly report first? And then we will adjourn our quarterly department heads and move right into Board of Selectmen.
I guess just one update, a question from David Martin. I believe he had asked about the Norotan Avenue, West Avenue intersection project, waiting on final approval and when the start and end dates would be. We are anticipating getting approval this week. We were hoping to get everything back, which means we're gonna take a 30-day bid period, which takes us to September 1st, at which time we'll do an award, hopefully get something started within a couple of weeks with the contractor. So we're looking at mid-September to October 1st for the construction start date.
Okay.
That puts us at probably about 2 or 3 month window to do the majority of the construction. What's going to hold us up is the acquisition of all the traffic poles and the traffic equipment. The old stuff will stay in place until the new stuff gets here, but the rest of the widening of the roadway, utility relocations, drainage improvements, anything like that, that should be done in about 2.5 months.
Okay.
Keeping my fingers crossed.
And the acquisition of the poles, any guess?
8 to 12 weeks. So we're gonna be doing some winter work out there with some traffic. It won't be as much of an impact as you would normally see with a construction project for sidewalks and things like that.
So hopefully we'll get a great Christmas present for conclusion.
I got red, green, and yellow out coming for you. Hopefully I'll light them all up.
All right.
Keep my fingers crossed. It's been a struggle with the DOT getting the approvals. It really has. A little bit more than I would anticipate.
Yeah, exactly.
Any other?
Ed, 2 quick questions. Railroad stations, any idea when they'll reopen?
That is completely a decision by the administration and myself.
No idea,
Right
right?
now, the level of use in the parking lots are about 25%. Once the number starts getting a little higher, I'll talk to Kate about what her thoughts are and Jamie about how they'd like to move forward. I did get a question from the DOT Rails Division. They'd like to know the same question, when we're anticipating that. I'm assuming come September, I hear a lot of the places in New York City are asking their folks to come back either part-time or full-time. So I anticipate possibly in September those opening up.
And then sticking with railroad, the commuter shelters, they folded into the design project, no problem?
They did. The only thing I'm waiting for is the architect to get a hold of me so I can look at some of the samples of what they're presenting and make sure it works with the surrounding buildings, our Darien train station and our canopies.
Okay, thanks.
The 2 Norotan Avenue intersections that you mentioned, the Ledge Road and West Avenue, they're not gonna happen at the same time, right? Because that would be particularly painful.
That would be bad.
Yeah. As someone who travels Norotan Avenue to the high school daily, I would greatly appreciate that, yes.
I'd probably get a phone call from you.
Yeah, I might,
Yeah,
with
no,
all
we-
due respect, yeah.
No, we would not schedule
Thank you,
it at the same
thank
time.
you.
And Ledge Road is out.
It seems farther out, yeah.
Yes.
You don't want to have to swing around and go up Leroy?
To follow on Monica, I think to revisit for a decision for the first week of September, to look at reopening one, if not both of those train station buildings. I don't know how many people would go inside, but I think if the commuting public is back to what might be our new normal, we probably should open those back up. And then on your front page, key issues for railroad parking, Norotan Heights Railroad Station sidewalk extension. Are you talking about the north side or the south side of Norotan Heights? The sidewalk by the old Myers building is what's on my mind.
South side.
South
Both.
side.
So I got some
Great.
locations coming off of Hollow Tree.
Okay.
We'd like to make a connection to the station too.
Yep.
We do have to present the DOT Rails folks with a plan, if you will, maybe a location map. So we're right in the middle of doing concrete work and sidewalk works now, so that's something we're gonna roll into probably in about a month or so.
Perfect. Any other questions for Ed on his quarterly report?
I would just add to what you said, Jamie, the Darien station, the lots are getting full.
Yeah.
I mean, just those right around the station.
Yeah, I keep watching the Leroy West lot every morning when I come in.
backing up to?
And, you know, we may encounter an issue where, you know, we've got a lot of people that want to park there, but we still have our testing tent. But I think it's really important that we keep the testing going there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Ed. All right, that adjourns our quarterly department heads meeting. So TV 79, we're going to move right into our Board of Selectmen. So I'd like to call to order the Board of Selectmen regular meeting for Tuesday, July 27th. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First up, a Gentile presentation on our sidewalk program. Thank you, Ed. Sidewalks are, as you know, a really, really important issue for the town of Darien, and we appreciate you giving us an overview of sidewalk rehab, new sidewalks, etc.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Wasn't sure what direction you wanted me to take this. I kind of started with I think the most obvious is how I select the sidewalks to be done. And I put some bullet points together, and I'll kind of walk you through it. If I get a little wordy, please stop me.
Can you define done? Does that mean new sidewalk or sidewalk rehab?
Sidewalk rehab.
Thank you.
Generally, we get complaints or queue alerts throughout the year. I do have the pedestrian infrastructure report that I've used from 2015. That's still a valuable tool. We do have DPW staff that go out and we visually look at locations. And there's also the sidewalk inspection report that was done in August 2019, and that's playing a more significant role right now with the two programs that I have running. And I'm going to tell you that the two programs we do have running is a very large sidewalk rehab program where we do lengths 1,000 feet at a time, and we have a sidewalk repair program, if you will. There's smaller sections. We have two different contractors that bid on those. One is run by the Assistant Director Darren Ostafine, and John Zerkowski, our highway supervisor, is taking care of the other one. So we have two contractors in town right now that are going to be working over the next month, 2 months, to do as much sidewalk as we can get done. Directed more off of the sidewalk report is something that Jonathan's working on. And you'll see as I go through how we got to that point. Impacts of sidewalk prioritization and construction schedule. I'm sure you folks know some of these, but maybe others you're not completely aware of. There's safety concerns and sidewalk inspection report. That's driving the prioritization, if you will. DOT permits. They're causing an impact on my schedule. Town and developer construction projects. I have to kind of work my schedule around some of the larger projects, specifically over in the Heights area. There's sections of West Avenue I wanted to do that I've not done just yet because they're working out there in the roadway. Those things had to be scheduled. Town paving schedule, the Board of Ed calendar. I work around schools right now. I'm working around 3 of them. I have to be aware of that scheduling. Drainage improvements in town, we're trying to get them done before we do the sidewalks. It makes perfect sense to get those taken care of. Construction season limits. There's only 8 months out of the year that I can do sidewalks. There's a maximum limit that I can put out there. This year, it looks like I'm going to target about 7,000 linear feet, plus or minus. Yearly funding impacts the work. And finally, my favorite, tree removals. They've slowed down some of our work, understandably so. Some of these trees are really nice to look at. The problem is they're causing safety issues to our sidewalks with heaving of the concrete and the asphalt. There has to be a give and a take here when we do this type of work. And we're going to try to get that message out more to the public so they can understand that as we move forward with these projects. A lot of our work is downtown right now. It's going to be the Sedgwick area to the railroad station. All of that streetscape work that's down there that needs some attention. And some of the reasons why are the larger trees that are still there in place. They just outgrown those little 6x5 openings that were put in the ground. And those things, we are going to put trees back, but we're going to put trees back that belong there. Yes, Jim?
Thank you. I just wanted to have you talk about the replacement, the tree replacement
Yeah.
offerings that you do.
Absolutely, it just makes sense. On the streetscape work, there is an amenity zone. You can put the trees in some locations where there's just sidewalk and the tree was kind of just stuck in there. We're not going to be able to put the tree back exactly where it was located, but we've made offers to the property owners that are adjacent to these sidewalks or in close proximity to see if we can plant trees on their property or in front of their property. And I think that makes more sense to try to do that than to try to squeeze something in that doesn't belong there. Now, I have this is my capital project binder. This is my Bible. This is how I have everything in here for sidewalks. If I ever lose it, I probably won't be able to do much sidewalk work here in town again. But what's in here is my 5-year plan with cost estimates, construction schedules, sidewalk linear footage, sidewalk type. I also have a total sidewalk list. I just keep adding to it, and I keep prioritizing and moving it around. I have a sidewalk replacement tracking sheet. It tells you when these sidewalks have been completed, how much they cost. I have a sidewalk map in the list. I have the sidewalk town policy. Proposed sidewalk priority matrix for new sidewalks. My predecessor was nice enough to put something together that kind of makes sense. I haven't had to adjust it all. It actually seems, if you look at something and you get a gut feeling it should be there, this matrix actually works out that way. Other ones that are borderline, the numbers show that. So it's a good tool to have. I have the Board of Ed transportation policy for walking to school. That's in this book. Very important. I have a news article, the Great Sidewalk Debate, concrete versus asphalt. I get asked that at least 2 or 3 times a year. I have the article. I have it scanned. I'm willing to send it to anybody that'd like to read it.
By the first selectman, who asks every year.
And finally, I do have the Pedestrian Infrastructure Advisory Committee report in here. And that's a very good tool that I keep close. So just a little recap on some sidewalk replacement. Since I've been here in 2014 and over my first 7 years, I did about 2.5 miles, about $1.6 million worth of work. But looking at what I've done in the last 3 years, I've done 1.6 of that. So about 2/3 of that work was done recently. You see I'm starting to ramp up. I'm starting to ramp up because basically the first selectman and the town administrator decided that there was more funding that was needed and it should be directed towards the sidewalks. So now I have money to spend, and now I'm moving up. Over the next 3 years, I'm gonna do 3.6 miles worth of sidewalks. I'm gonna spend close to $2 million doing it. Just a little quick update on where we are right now, and then I'll touch quickly on the new sidewalks, and I think that should hopefully spur some questions if you have it. Currently, actually recently in April, we finished Tokenique across from the school all the way down to Cliff Avenue from Great Hill. So we had done now the entire east or north side, depending on which way you want to look at it. We are currently up on Hollow Tree Ridge Road in front of the middle school. It's about 2,000 linear feet. We're about halfway done with that right now. We will be moving over to Sedgwick, McLaren, and Coach Lamp. That's part of the repair program that came through the study that was done back in 2019 for our evaluation of our sidewalks. We're going to go over to the Post Road, Hampton area in front of the YMCA. We're going to continue that work up. We do have Leroy on the list for this year also. We're going to complete that from West Avenue all the way to Kona Road. So it may appear that I'm hopping around in different places, but there's different priorities I'm setting with regards to safety issues, with regards to repairs. And don't get me wrong, this is not chiseled in stone. I can easily change something as long as I haven't put it out to the public. I do try to keep this very close to my vest because things do come up where I do have to make a modification. And I don't want to mislead some folks that they're going to get a new sidewalk and not give that to them. So, and finally, some new sidewalk project statuses. I'm sure there's some questions on these. Edgerton, from West to West Elm, we do need to have a public hearing on that. We have yet to schedule that. West Avenue, the north side, from Norotan headed towards Fairfield Avenue. It's on hold right now until Lot SIP project is started. I'm going to do both the project and this small extension to complete that sidewalk that's missing out there. Mansfield Avenue from Overbrook to Mansfield Place. I am looking to set up a meeting with the DOT. She's yet to respond to my email, so she may get a phone call. Just want to meet with her out there, see if we can bounce some ideas about getting a sidewalk in there without removing the 10 or 12 trees, without dismantling the walls that are out there. Anything the DOT will allow me to do that will provide a safe walking path. Right now, it's just packed dirt behind the sidewalk, and I think we can do better. So we'll see if we'll get them to work with us on that. We have Tokenique from I-95 off-ramp to halfway down. There's a new sidewalk that needs to be put in there. That's missing from the section. Holmes Avenue, there's a section from Middlesex down to 159 Holmes, as there is a section missing from Abbey down. Those three last projects all require me to notify the property owners, and I've yet to do that. That's where I am with the sidewalks.
I just had a quick question. I'm wondering if you can, I know time is of the essence today. I'm just wondering if you can go over quickly, if you had, let's say, a street that wanted a sidewalk. I know there's many, many steps. Can you go over kind of a quick overview just so that our residents understand that it's not a simple process?
Okay. The evaluation through the matrix process for brand-new sidewalks takes into consideration your location to specific walking locations, schools, parks, train stations. Then it takes into consideration, and that's just one section, then it takes into consideration population. Are you coming from a dense area or is it lightly populated? And there's a couple questions on that. And the third and final is topography and ease of construction. And is there things out there that, is there a sidewalk on the other side of the street? Those all they help you rank the location for a new sidewalk.
Hey Ed, so this comes up all the time, this sidewalk thing, and I don't suggest things without being ready to step up. But maybe it's an RTM thing, but I think if we had something on the website that said, these are the parameters, this is what we look at. Basically, this report you just gave now, kind of in a bullet point structure. I'm happy to work on it, or maybe Public Works RTM wants to do it, but I think it would be really helpful and save you answering these questions every year and maybe every day. So
I do
think
enjoy the
about
conversation.
Think about it.
It's rare that I get to speak about so specifically about work I do, but your point is well taken. Anything that I can put on the website that gives folks, hey, why can't I have a sidewalk? Or what do I need to do?
Yeah.
Or where does it fall in
Yeah.
regards to sidewalks in my neighborhood? Or I want to walk to a certain place. How come it doesn't have a sidewalk?
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
At that point, I think any and all information that we can put out would be really helpful for our residents. The paving schedule is lovely. People love to see all that information, so thank you very much for doing that.
The paving schedule comes out just before I start to pave, usually about 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks before, just as I sign the contract.
And you're pretty good about putting that in the paper.
I try to get it out there. I've also, at that time, locked in the roads.
Right.
Knowing that, any changes I make from that is gonna cost me money with the contractor.
Right.
So Ed can attest that Ed and I talk about sidewalks all the time, and we always talk about money and what would it take, Do you have the manpower? Can we bring in contractors to do more? I believe that this Board of Selectmen and maybe future Board of Selectmen will continue to support financially, sidewalk work. So, I will leave it with that comment that, hopefully the future board will continue the commitment to sidewalk improvements and new sidewalks, because it's super important to the town.
I hope so too. Looking at the plan for 5 years, the next couple of years, the requests are about 750,000 K for the next 2 years, and then it kind of drops off again because I've caught up to that list that we have. That's my target. I can understand financial concerns may pop up that may change that, but I will move forward with what I have until someone tells me differently.
So I have kind of just a small question, but places that I drive past every day, going up Mansfield essentially from the Post Road all the way up to Overbrook.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of places where the sidewalk seams are uneven. There is grass that has encroached on sidewalks to narrow the sidewalks. Do you guys address those things? I think you not long ago walked that path on Mansfield, look at the condition of the sidewalk, but,
I have it on my plan to be replaced in
Great.
FY 22-23.
okay,
It's about 3,200 linear feet.
great.
Runs around $240,000 to do it. So it's, I walked that out there. We
Yeah.
could do some patchwork out there, but this needs its attention now.
Yep.
The grass is overgrown. There's really nothing I can do with that. It'll continue to pond. So we're gonna go in there, we're gonna take care of it.
Okay.
Like we've done Tokenique, just to Tokenique. And like we did Hoyt Street over by the school. We're gonna put the sidewalks in the way they belong.
Great, thank you. And then sort of just a kind of a homeowner note that, you know, there's a lot of places around town where vegetation, bushes grow into sidewalks. I think there's a responsibility on the part of homeowners to do what they can to make sure that those sidewalk areas are kept clear so people don't have to veer into the road around planted materials.
I completely agree. I know that Anthony in our office writes at least 1 or 2 letters a week, just letting the neighbors know that they need to do some trimming back, whether it's for sight distance or whether for safety because the sidewalk is starting to shrink. But I know he does that because I review them before they go out.
Great.
But we'll continue to do that.
Thank you, Ed.
You're welcome.
More questions for Ed on sidewalks? No? Okay. Thanks so much.
Have a good day. Take care.
Okay. All right, first Selectmen's report. David talked a bit about COVID, so I won't rehash that. Storm Elsa, Mark talked a little bit about that. We did hold an after-action meeting about Storm Elsa on the 20th of July. You heard Mark is working with 5 homeowners that have severe damage to their homes. We're hoping that perhaps there's an opportunity to sort of package those applications to FEMA. Apparently FEMA may look more favorably on an aggregated grant application. So we'll see where that goes with Mark and Jeremy's outreach. Planning and Zoning on the 20th of July approved the regrading and restoration work of the property at 30 Edgerton. So that will be moving forward. I want to talk a little bit about trees. I think all of you have been copied on the dialogue on Littlebrook Road and other areas around town where Eversource is asking for tree removals. The town Parks and Recreation and Friends of Selleck's Woods continue to work with Eversource and ConDOT on Eversource's plan to remove trees in their transmission line easement area. The town has received a draft replanting plan for the Littlebrook Road area that will be discussed at the future public hearing that we're going to have on the tree postings. The neighbors that have received that planting plan can give feedback at any time to Eversource. They know who that contact is on their thoughts on that planting plan, and I'm grateful excuse me, that the folks from the Pollinator Pathway are also involved in reviewing that replanting plan. That public hearing for the Littlebrook Road trees will likely happen in September. The neighbors did not want us to have that hearing during the summer, so we respected that wish. We need to see a more comprehensive plan for tree removals adjacent to Selleck's and Dunlop's woods. That survey work has been done. Those trees have been identified. They have been communicated to the Parks and Rec Department and to the Darien Land Trust. So there are now negotiations as to whether there can be, will be any replantings allowed in that DOT easement area. DOT does not request planting plans in their easement areas, so that'll be a negotiated idea. As a matter of fact, DOT supports, we specifically asked this, DOT supports Eversource's plan to remove trees that are impacting the transmission lines, because those transmission lines feed the Metro North Corridor. ConDOT may allow replantings in some of their right-of-way along the Littlebrook Road area, and those discussions are pending. There's a nice berm on Littlebrook Road, and it makes good sense for replantings to be allowed at the crest of the berm for good screening to the railroad, but that the top of that berm is in the DOT easement, so they will have to approve any replanting plans. Eversource has also requested to remove trees along Heights Road as well. Ed Gentile and I met with DOT and Eversource to discuss a replanting plan for that area, and that plan is pending. Regarding our need to address ARPA funding, in the near future, we're going to be bringing a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen to create a sort of a select committee to work on the ARPA spending, and that will, as I mentioned before, that will include representatives from a number of different arms of town government. Interestingly and distressingly, on Thursday, July 22nd, the town hall was visited by an individual representing Long Island Audit. He was apparently undertaking a First Amendment audit by visiting offices in Darien Town Hall and videotaping our employees and their surroundings. To the best of my knowledge, at no time was the individual aggressive, but created a great deal of understandable concern for our employees. Town Council is working with Kate and the administration to determine any new policies or procedures we can put in place to lessen the negative impacts of these apparently legally permissible activities. You may or may not know that the newly constructed Royal is undertaking a noise abatement project, where they're, in every other apartment, they're adding a couple layers of sheetrock, because I guess the noise is not conducive to good living. And I just want to, again, thank the Parks and Recreation Department, Darien Public Schools, David Genovese, Darien PD, Norotan Heights Fire Department, and all of our generous sponsors for pulling together to host town fireworks. The evening and the fireworks display were exceptional. Kate.
Just to follow on about the First Amendment audit, the gentleman was, at least in my presence, he was not nasty. He was dismissive, condescending. His premise was that the First Amendment gave him the right to videotape public spaces and to videotape employees because we are public employees. My response to him was that we are private people. But we do understand that videotaping is allowed in public spaces. It is disconcerting as an employee and, for my employees. People were concerned that he was casing the joint. But it's also that feeling of almost like, you're a zoo animal, that I can just come in and film you sitting at your desk working. Very disconcerting. It, makes you feel like, where did his rights end and ours begin, or you feel like we lost rights. I don't think people enter into public service thinking that you're giving up rights. You enter into public service because this is what you want to do. It's not that we couldn't do other things. This is where our calling is. And so it was, it was very disconcerting. This town hall is welcoming, it's open. We had, when we were making decisions about reorganizing the land use department, that was one of the things that came up with the employees of planning and zoning and building, how welcoming we are and how builders like to come here because, you can come in and you can ask the employees things. I don't want to lose that. And I don't think employees do, but any changes we make that would be to protect our employees, we will consult with them and make sure that the decisions we make allow us to continue the high level of service we provide to the public. Some people were upset that I didn't call the police. Some people wanted to call the police themselves. I felt that what this gentleman was looking for was confrontation. He was looking for that type of escalation. It has happened in other towns. I mean, you can go online and see what happened in Danbury, where I think there were 4 or 5 police at one time confronting him. I didn't want that for Darien. I didn't want that to be blasted across YouTube, across the newspapers. My thinking in not calling the police was protect the town, to not have that, and I didn't think it was warranted. He didn't have a weapon or anything like that. He had a cell phone. Other than that, we are working, Jim Cameron talked about the cameras we're putting in. he and Mike Wheeler and I had a discussion yesterday about ways that we can manage meetings if we have to go forward with hybrid meetings. I've already spoken with the moderator of the RTM. We've talked about what we might possibly do with the RTM to have them meet in public, yet stay safe, because of some of the new laws from Public Act 21-2 that governs what we have to do in cases of hybrid meetings. Some of them can be complicated, and it just, the quality of the meeting is not the same. When you've got some people in person, some people participating remotely, it's not the same, so we are working on that. And then the last thing, interestingly, we had somebody from Disney Plus come in yesterday, looking at the building as a potential site for filming a high school-based movie.
More filming.
Well, and that's what he said to me at one point. He said, you know, I might want to come back and
Yes.
take pictures
Yeah.
of the interior, and I'm like, yeah. Let's hold off on that. So, you know, they just came in yesterday, and we have to talk to Parks and Rec, see if it's feasible, see if it's something that, you know, we can't disrupt the operations at Town Hall. But it's an interesting, interesting situation. That's it.
Okay, thank you. So I'm looking at how we should organize this because I have 7 minutes left here. Why don't I'll entertain a motion to amend the agenda to take up appointments next on the agenda.
So moved.
Kip moves, may I have a second?
Second.
David seconds, may I have all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Great. Okay, we'll take these one by one. I'll entertain a motion to approve the reappointment of Kim Hufford to the Police Commission for a term expiring on 6/20/24.
Moved.
Kip moves, may I have a second?
Second.
Monica seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is that unanimous, I believe?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Reappointment of Kelly Galvin to the Town Pension Board for a term expiring on 6/30/23. Motion, please.
Move.
Monica moves. May I have a second?
Second.
David seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Appointment of Jim Furlong to the Coastal Waters Commission for a term expiring on 12/31/2021.
So moved.
Kip moves. May I have a second?
Second.
Sarah seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Appointment of Joan Canlian to the Housing Authority for a term expiring on 6/30/25. Sarah moves. May I have a second?
Second.
David seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Appointment of Marcia Cleary to the Commission on Aging for a term expiring on 3/31/24.
So moved.
Kip moves. May I have a second?
Sarah.
Sarah seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. An appointment of Monica McNally as the Board of Selectmen representative on the IT Steering and Governance Advisory Committee. Motion?
So moved.
Kip moves. May I have a second? Sarah seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Monica, thank you for stepping forward to do that. Are you voting on yourself? You can, or you can abstain.
I'll vote for myself. sure.
Perfect, thank you, okay. Okay, thank you very much. And Kate, am I necessary for the executive session? Is that something that I have to vote on?
Well, we're not going to vote.
Okay.
Wayne just wants to update you on an item we discussed in the last executive session litigation.
Okay, perfect. I'm up to date on that. So with your permission, we will go back to new business, item number 2, if that's okay. We'll talk about the safe driving campaign and ask for your input and approval. Sarah, please join in this conversation. Sarah and I are really happy to present to you today a proposal by Noble House, a local marketing firm, which we've been very pleased to work with, who's put together a very robust PR campaign for safe driving around town. We don't really know what the name's going to be yet because that's going to be part of our startup workshop to really nail down what that slogan will be. But as you can see from their presentation, it includes all forms of media, direct mail, social media marketing. There will be some other materials, banners, lawn signs, some posters that will go up in our local businesses. And Noble House will undertake all of the marketing logistics to affect that campaign. We would like to run the campaign for the month of September this year as the first year, but we're thinking that June is probably the better month going forward. The cost of this campaign is approximately $12,000 for year one, $4,000 for future years. Brent Hayes is addressing the police commission today. He believes that he can get a not to exceed $12,000 contribution from the police commission to fund the campaign for this year. So we wouldn't need an appropriation, which would be terrific.
Just, it would come from their false alarm.
Come from their false alarm fund. And, you know, it's a great synergy to partner with the police commission on a campaign of this sort. There may be opportunities for other commercial business sponsorships that we are exploring. So what I would love to ask is for Sarah to offer any other comments and then for questions.
So I love the idea of doing this campaign for many reasons. I have been very much walking out in the community every single day, and I do notice that it is an issue, particularly around COVID. People are trying to give each other more space and moving, and the cars sometimes move for you and sometimes they don't. I think it's very important for us to be paying attention. Recently, it appears that there was a young girl who was hit by a vehicle, I think in front of Whole Foods last week, according to social media. And I think we just need to make sure that we're doing a good job talking to our residents, and with the banners, the idea is to maybe put them at places where people are coming into the town from different towns. We just need to be very attentive to what's going on as we have new buildings downtown and more people walking around and more businesses. It's going to be very important, but it is also very important on the local roads, and we want to make sure our residents are as safe as possible.
Yeah, thank you. And I do think the police commission is going to be talking about that incident today, because there's some nuanced facts to that unfortunate situation. So with that, I'll open it up to questions from the Board of Selectmen.
So our initial thoughts that we would kick it off in September this year, but then do it again in June?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Trying to capture that just to get out of school time.
Yeah, that's, in my mind, that's the perfect time to do it, because theoretically, there's more people around town walking, so.
Yep.
And 12K this year and 4K next year?
Yes.
Okay.
So Sarah, it's a 1 month program?
Yep, it's aimed as a 1-month program for the, this year will be September, and next year will be June. As David's thinking, you know, at time out of school, the kids are walking, and especially at the beginning of school, the end of school, more people are walking to school and from school, kids are riding their bikes, and so it's just that kind of 1-month period, but on an annual basis.
Okay. Great.
If there are no other questions, then I would entertain a motion to approve the establishment of an annual safe driving campaign with the first year of the program to run for the month of September 2021.
So moved.
David moves. May I have a second? Sarah seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Enthusiastically. I think
Thank you
it'll
very
be
much.
Terrific.
Yeah, thanks for working on this.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, I'm going to ask Kip if you would take over administering the rest of the Board of Selectmen meeting.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you very much. Sorry, I have to leave, guys.
Kate, can we do the litigation at the very end?
All you have left is minutes in that, but Wayne is outside, so,
So we have to go into executive session.
yes. So you need a motion to go into executive session.
Okay,
We need
can
Wayne.
I have a motion to go into executive session?
So
Sarah?
Wayne?
So moved. Someone will need to tell TV 79.
Okay, so we're back in open session. Let's go back and look at any selectmen updates. Sarah?
I would just like to say thank you. It's a busy part of July for the town. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who was involved for the fireworks. I know people from Parks and Rec, the police department, and particularly the cleanup of all of that. I'm having been there myself, it was a wonderful event. So I just want to thank everyone that was involved, from maintenance and everyone. It was certainly a fantastic and a positive and successful event. I know the sidewalk sales are coming up at the end of this week, and we really hope everyone comes out and supports our Darien businesses. It seems like a really positive time of the month. Oh, and the Boy Scouts that were recently promoted to Eagle Scouts. What a wonderful thing. Congratulations to them. Would love to have been there. I just think it's such a phenomenal group of young men, and it's nice to have 4 of them. So yeah, next time let us know. We would love to be there. It's such a nice group of young men. So I'm really, it's a nice time of month, and hope everyone comes out to support the Darien businesses.
David, anything?
Not this week.
My short report on the Oxford School is that at the end of June, we were about 29% completed with the academic wing. We have a very busy summer schedule, which involves not only putting in a huge propane tank, 18,000 gallon propane tank, but also doing major work about bringing in electrical lines and water lines and sanitary sewer. So we are racing ahead to make sure that we get all this done before the school opens, and put a parking lot back in, that is to say, and an entryway. So I'll have much more to report it by the end of August. Hopefully, cross your fingers, we'll get it all done in time. And that's the report update on the Oxford program. I guess the next order of business is to review minutes. Are there any corrections for the regular meeting of 7/12, minutes of 7/12?
I have one correction. Ed wasn't added.
Oh,
Okay. Are there any other corrections? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes as corrected for this 12th of July? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Minutes of a special meeting of 7/12, which I think was relatively perfunctory. Any?
Motion to approve.
David?
Second.
David, Sarah. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And then on the minutes of the special meeting on the 21st, I want to say that Krista McNamara was not present.
Correct.
Monica was there instead.
Correct.
okay.
Other than that, I have no other
I don't
corrections.
think I did them.
Do you have any corrections?
Yeah, I think somebody, yeah, we will fix that.
Okay. Are there any other corrections?
No.
Sorry about that, Monica.
Motion to approve?
Moved with changes, yes.
Second?
Second.
David, all those in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Agenda review.
I'd really be interested to, I know I mentioned this last time, to talk about the after action report from the meeting that they've had. Had a chance to find out some more information from one of the businesses on Heights Road who's been very frustrated with the continued flooding, and having been walking on Heights Road recently with the sewers that are above the road, and the flooding issues seem to be still happening, even though the mitigation should have prevented some of that from happening. I know there was a fridge that was lost at Favelas, so I would be very interested in looking at that, because I know our businesses along that road in particular were frustrated. So
Yeah, we are planning to ask Ed Gentile and Craig Flaherty to attend
That would
the
be
meeting
great.
in August to discuss it.
that'd be great. Thank you.
To discuss that particular flooding on Heights
Yeah.
Road.
Yeah, they're frustrated
Okay.
with rights.
Well, I think there may be some misconceptions that the work that was being done would eliminate flooding,
Right.
as opposed to, and it was not designed to eliminate the flooding, it was
Right.
designed to mitigate the flooding.
Right.
I
think it might be good to hear, because I know
think-
they were
I
going
think
to look
that
and
needs
make
to
sure
be-
everything worked, and so that, yes, it removed the most of the water, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then if there's anything else that we can do, I don't know, so we can, who knows? It's a perpetual issue, I guess, in some areas. Thank you.
Any other agenda review? Hearing none, a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much. We are adjourned.